What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run 2 programs called Inner Knowing and Good Life Designed for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals on tools and frameworks for creating an intuitive practice and for creating self-mastery in their life. As someone who's helped countless entrepreneurs open doors of possibility that they never thought existed, I've seen these strategies transform people's lives. The best part is that you'll 10x your output, unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly to overcome your limiting beliefs. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition, and set a new framework on how to live your best life. And you'll get access to guided meditations that I have personally created that are not available anywhere else. We'll create a new self-concept that you can practice moving forward. This method is so effective that even if you don't have a lot of time or if you think you're not ready for a change, these frameworks and methodologies will still work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can also check out what some of the previous clients had to say about our time together. It's first come, first serve, and I hope to see you there. Hi, my name is Yasmin Turehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Today's episode is about living happy to be you with Dr. Valerie René Sheppard, a certified master trainer, self-mastery expert, and CEO of the Hartley Center for Mindfulness and Self-Mastery. Dr. Valerie René Sheppard helps people live with more courage, confidence, inner peace, and happiness. And the wisdom in her multi-award-winning #1 international bestseller, Living Happy to Be Me, is the centerpiece of her transformational work. Dr. Valerie received her PhD in Consciousness and Human Potential in 2021 and is on the board of the Evolutionary Business Council and is just this incredible, outstanding human who I met at this conference that we both were a part of. So welcome to the show, Dr. Valerie.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. It is my honor and pleasure to be here. I'm really delighted to be in community with you and have a chance to connect on this topic, which is my purpose. So many blessings and deep gratitude.
Likewise, Valerie. It's been such an honor to get to know you, and I really appreciate your level of thinking on so many topics. And so I'm really happy to dig into this conversation on happiness. So to kick it off, do you think most people are happy on average? And why do so many people chase a sense of happiness in the future?
I love this question, and I love it, and I also hate it. So I'll tell you the dynamic that's going on. So this idea of like measuring happiness from statistical means or group consciousness, and we do it. I mean, for years there have been corporations that actually measure happiness as a product, as a result, because there's data that shows that happy people are more productive. Countries are measuring gross happiness quotients. There's a global happiness studies, Ipsos, and a lot of people are tracking this kind of thing. So on from a database perspective, I think some of the latest data was actually March of this year that says that 73% of adults across 32 different markets that were studied describe themselves as happy. And um, it has been going up and down. There are certain countries that report that their people are the happiest. And so on average, I would say, on average, yeah, most people in the markets that are studied, based on the data that we have, most people would report that they're happy. And here's the part that I hate about that. When we're looking at this from a totally intellectual point of view and what the data says, we can get lost in the numbers. And what I mean by being lost is not that we can't deal with them, it's that we're not there. Um, it's really not about a comparison to some norm or some international standard. It's really about your individual joy in the absolute. And it doesn't matter, regardless of how you measure up relative to others, is not critically, it's not important at all. The danger here being that if you're on average higher than the standard or the norm, you may get complacent and you may say, well, I'm better off than most, so I guess I should be happy. I should be happy. Or you could actually feel bad about wanting to be happier, which totally circumvents the whole process and the whole question to begin with. So what I tell people is it doesn't matter if the person to the right, to the left, in front of and behind you are happy. All that matters is your ability to evaluate, to discern your happiness and what you're willing to do about it.
Mm. So I want to actually double click on this idea of evaluating our own sense of happiness. And I think, a lot of people are so out of touch with how they're feeling and oftentimes are maybe happy for short periods of time. Do we have like default states of happiness, or like set points of happiness day to day? And like, how do people evaluate their states? Like, do they do an inventory? How do you assess that, or how do you work with people to understand that?
Working with people to figure out like where they are is really um, a joy. And it comes from me having done this in my own journey. So everything that I'm teaching around the achievement of your highest vibration, highest potential state comes from me having been in my lowest. So for me, when I measured happiness, it exactly was what I mentioned a minute ago. I was doing what everyone had told me would quote unquote make me happy, the quote unquote source of happiness. And I was doing all those things, and I ended up in a place in my 40s where I was not happy. I had all the trappings of what was supposed to lead to a happy life. I was at the pinnacle of my career, living in a great house in my dream city, dream state, near the beach, all the conditions that I had put on what would make quote unquote make me happy, um, really weren't. They would give me these periods of excitement, these periods of feeling elation, but they were fleeting and they were often few and far between. And so I called it a fairly empty or hollow victory. And so people can have set points. I mean, there is data that says on average, people making over $75,000 a year, like there's a set point there. Um, on average, people who are more grateful um, show up as more happy. So I bring up these things because they're conditions of happiness. And the kind of when I'm talking about joy and bliss, I'm talking about unconditional, meaning regardless of the external circumstantial evidence that's in my life, my level of happiness is as high as it can go. It's high no matter what. So I can have a really horrible day and people will ask me, "How are you doing, Dr. Valerie?" And I'll say, "Great." And that's the truth. That's not sugarcoating it. That's not being Pollyanna. That's being connected to my deepest sense of happiness, which is an internal, unconditional experience, as opposed to an external, driven by conditions in my life kind of experience.
You talk about internal happiness versus external happiness. And I think this is such an important point to highlight because, I think so many people are looking for happiness outside themselves, really focusing on their external reality to inform their internal reality. So, how did you get to a place where you got to internal happiness?
It was a wonderful journey that led me to this realization that I was looking for love in all the wrong places, so to speak. Um, it was a combination of reaching a point in my life where I was frustrated that I felt like I'd been a good girl. Like, I even used to say this, but I'm a good girl. Why am I not getting the rewards for having been a good girl? I'm doing the things. I help people. I tithe at my church. I support the poor. I work hard. I have integrity, like all these things. And yet there was still something missing. And I went on a journey through courses and counseling. I did some psychiatric counseling and psychological counseling. And then I started doing some spiritual counseling with a psycho-spiritual counselor. So doing both spirituality and psychology. And I took courses and I read books, and I landed on this idea for myself that what's going on inside me is really dictating more of my experience than anything else. And noticing, the way I call something, the way I interpret and internalize a situation changes the way I actually experience the situation. And then my interpretations, understanding my interpretations are coming from inside me. And that was a journey that it was an amalgamation of several different, years and thousands of dollars and thousands of hours of introspection and self evaluation and self reflection. It was a long journey of, most important thing, noticing what I'm noticing about me and my relationship with the world and others, and most importantly, with myself.
That's so beautiful. Really, really important, I think, for people to hear too.
Really is. I mean, Yasmin, all the people that I work with, whether they're emerging adults, young people, 17 to 29, or they're in their retirement years, or they're mid-career. Some of them are C-suite executives. Some of them are entrepreneurs. Regardless, there is a common theme among them, and it is the same thing that I've been through, which is, wow, my life is really, really good. So why am I not happier? These aren't people who are having the dark night of the soul. These aren't people who've lost everything and they're trying to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. They're people who see the opportunities, see the things that they have to be grateful for, see all these things in their lives, and see also that it feels hollow or empty. And they're seeking, what's the tie that binds? Like, what is the true source of my happiness that is lasting and not fleeting? And how do I create a relationship with it that I just can
Mm,
keep nurturing?
so powerful. And I really love that because it also gives the person agency, to like really make a decision that this is where I'm going to put my awareness and energy and attention, as opposed to, you know, again, letting life tell you how you should feel. So that's so powerful. So I want to dig into these 4 key foundational principles and spiritual wisdom to living a happy life. Can you tell us what they are? These are the principles that you spoke about in your book.
Oh, sure. I love talking about my book, Yasmin. Thank you. Um, so, Living Happy to Be Me, Dancing Your Soul Light Style is a guide. It's a guidebook along with principles for living a happy life. And I want to just take one moment and talk about the title. So, those words were chosen very specifically with a lot of spiritual reflection and checking on my pendulum and downloads. So it's not an arbitrary title. So living is about actually doing something day in and day out in an embodied way, meaning boots on the ground, second nature sort of understanding of who I am in my life and what my life is all about. The happy part was an accessible way to talk about something that is even a higher vibration than happiness, which is joy, and even higher than that is bliss. And joy and bliss were a little less approachable, tangible for people. So the guidance was to use the word happy as a way to connect with where people are, meet them where they are, and help them get where they want to go is my mission. Um, the idea of being, we are mostly humans doing, and being is not something that we're really taught. And many people don't know how to do it, and I was one of them. And so the being happy to be me is a really important aspect. And then if you look at the title on the book, the ME is capitalized. It's an acronym, and it's about magnificent essence. And this is about the divinity that we all are, the image and likeness of the divine. It's about knowing that what you are is as important, if not more so, than who you are, which may be rooted in kind of fleeting things of personality and identity and things that you take on in order to fit in and find friends and feel like you matter. And so, magnificent essence is a much deeper aspect of you as innately divine. And so, living happy to be me is about your transition from a focus on the trappings of happiness that the mighty ego might want, which is lowercase me, mighty ego, and the higher vibration aspect of you, the magnificent essence. And then the Dancing Your Soul Light Style in the subtitle is about when we release the concepts of the mighty ego, like proving ourselves, working hard, um, I need to be liked, feeling fear and not knowing what to do about it, getting caught up in anger, resentment, judgment, etc. When we let go of those things, when we release their grip on us and heal any wounds left in their wake, we can dance. We're much more lighter, that lightness of being. So we're lighter, and we can dance in the energy of our true self, which is the soul, the higher self, the eternal, immortal manifestation of the divine that every single one of us is. And so that's the title. And the book lives up to that, brings it to life with 4 principles of how you get there. And their steps. And the first one is wake up to the truth of who you are. You're not just human. You're 100% spiritual and 100% human. You have the qualities of a harmonized divine masculine and feminine. You are matter in the 3rd dimension, and you are energy in the 5th and the 6th and the 11th and the 12th. You are all of these things coming into integrated harmony in the dimension of the 3rd called the planet Earth. So waking up to that truth and understanding what that all means. Like how do I live as that with boots on the ground, with my name being Valerie Sheppard? So that's the first step. The second is once you get that, once you really, really get that, it's time to shake up and release all the things that don't align with that. Like, how can I think of myself as unworthy because of the color of my skin if I know the truth of who I am? And so, how can I think of myself as not good enough because of some other aspect of me if I really, truly, deeply know step 1? So, they kind of play off of one another and they integrate. Step 3 is a continuation, which is okay, if you've got step 1 and you're doing step 2, shaking up and releasing the things that don't align with you as magnificent essence, maybe it's time to write a new story. Write a new story of who you are in your life and what your life is going to be about? Meaning, what did you come here for? I guarantee you it wasn't to get a bigger boat or a really big house or a title that you can be proud of. It was about something deeper, and connecting to that story, like recreating yourself in that seminal story, is a really important part of accessing the joy and the bliss that is already a part of who you are, what you are. And then the last one is take up the reins and go live it. And that's basically saying, how do I embody this knowledge? I typically say knowledge is not power. Power comes from knowledge put into action over and over and over and over. And that's when it becomes wisdom. And that's what step 4 is about. What are the practices that help me remember and expanding remembering for the rest of my life? Who are the people that align with who I'm evolving into as my higher consciousness? And how do I get to dance and play with them and not just work hard to prove that I got it?
Wow. So these 4 principles, or I actually call them steps, really, they're both principles and steps, I think are really fundamental to this inner happiness. And, it's interesting. I've never heard it this way because there is a spiritual piece to this concept. And, what about, and I want to come back to this because I have a lot of follow-up questions, but what about for people who maybe are not aware of this kind of spiritual dimension of who they are? How do you work with people on that level, or do they have to believe that in order for the other steps to make sense?
I love talking about this question, Yasmin. So thank you for putting it into the space. So I introduced a course, and a collegiate level course, that was designed to teach self mastery. And it was called Living 101, Being Happy and Whole. And it wasn't a large number of students, but in every class, and at one point we had 90 students in this course, um, every course, there were students in the class who were in varying degrees of buy in. In other words, some had been devoutly Christian, devoutly Catholic, devoutly practicing Judaism or Islam. And then others were kind of like, sort of agnostic. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. In my experience, I'm having trouble believing. There were things that disconnected them from organized religion. This is not about denigrating organized religion, but I had the same experience in my life. I'd been through several different religions because I lived a military culture as a military kid. And so we were in different bases and different churches and all kinds of different things. And um, so that kind of brought in a whole bunch of different things for me. And I kind of fell out of love with religious practice for a long time. And so we had people in the class who were like that. And we had people in the class who were absolutely came up to me at the end of the first class and said, I'm an atheist. Am I going to get anything out of this class? And the way I talked about it was, I don't care what you are. These teachings are agnostic. They come across from a number of different religious, spiritual perspectives, and you don't need to believe any of them. So I will tell you what I use to describe what I consider an all encompassing principle on the planet. I don't think of the divine, or what I call God, as some Caucasian male up in the heavens manipulating things. I think of God as a principle, and to me, that principle is love. And so unconditional love is the centerpiece of what I do, what I teach, what I talk about, what I demonstrate, what I live. And so when I have that conversation with people and let them know this really is about love and principles surrounding how we as individuals come together as a collective, loving ourselves and loving each other. then I usually don't have any more questions about I'm an atheist or an agnostic or a devout Christian. Um, I will tell you that if people are very devout or fundamentalist in their perspectives, what I say may sound somewhat heretical. It may sound like it flies in the face of their teachings, scriptures in the Bible. And I'm not a Bible scholar, but scriptures in the Bible and things like that. So it's not surprising to me. So the bottom line to your question is what I teach and what I say and the way I say it is not for everyone. And in fact, I'm okay with that because I know that people are going to find what they need through the millions of light workers and voices on the planet, and they don't need to necessarily align with me. And so I know who I work best with, and my ideology and my body of work supports the most. And those are people who have a connection to the spiritual aspect of who they are and want to take that to a deeper level to fuel the things that they want in their lives, which most often is inner peace, courageous confidence that allows them to go after their dreams no matter what, and this sense of contentment that from which springs this inner bliss.
Mm, powerful. So, Dr. Valerie, I want to double click on some of the things you mentioned earlier in the four principles. And thank you for explaining your process, and I think this theme of love is so powerful because no one can really argue with that, right? It's just like,
Well, some people can, but
yeah, I guess
go ahead.
it's funny. I used to live in San Francisco, and I remember having a discussion about like, well, what about love? And, a lot of the scientists in the room just kind of rolled their eyes. And so, yeah, there are people I think who could scoff at that. But I think universally that's a theme that we can wrap our heads around at least. But I want to go back to one of the four key foundational principles that you mentioned, which is about remembering what we came here for, beyond the ego, beyond the sort of whatever we validated ourselves in this external world. I think a lot of people don't know what they want and don't know what they have come here for. I've, maybe anecdotally found that piece is the hardest for most people to transition into. And so I'm curious how you help people maybe discover what they came here for, or if that is something that is sort of given to them over time. How do you work with people on that principle?
I love this question. And I was one of the people who was doing all kinds of different things and thought that's what I was here for until I hit that period in my life when I said, is this all? Like, is this what my life is going to forever be about? It's just going to be about chasing a better title, a better zip code, and more money. Like, I just couldn't figure that part out. So, um, I totally resonate with your question. And especially when I'm dealing with emerging adults, most of them aren't clear on what they're here for. Most of them aren't 100% sure they're even choosing 100% to be here. Um, and I don't mean that from a they're choosing suicide. I'm mean that from a what am I doing here? What. And they're following paths, many of us, well into our lives. I know people who get to retirement and still don't know. They've put in 30 years at a company or 30 years as an entrepreneurial venture, and they've sold their company and they've got their multi-millions or billions if they're really fortunate, and they're still wondering. And I think the first and most important thing is let's release ourselves from the idea that that's bad or wrong, that we don't know. So um, I think getting to peace, like making peace with, well, I don't know. I don't know what I want. Um, I had to do that, especially since from an archetypal perspective, I seem to identify with the archetype of the dilettante. And the dilettante is one who plays, dances, tries on, does a number of different things to a point, lets them go and try something else. I've done acting, I've done modeling, I've done dancing, I've been an NCAA athlete. I'm also an author. I've run billion-dollar portfolios of business and as a marketing executive. I've done a number of different things. And then I compare and contrast that with other people who have known since the beginning of their time they were a musician. And that's all they pursued. And everything came back to different variations on that theme. And so across the spectrum, wherever people are, the most important thing is to accept, like acknowledge that that's where you are, accept how you got there, and then ask a new question, a different question. And here's where it really gets to, instead of discovering, I would like to change that word to discerning. So a discernment is about a granularity of understanding, evaluation, and then choice. And then right after choice is action. And then lather, rinse, and repeat, right? We're getting to granularity, we're understanding, we're making an evaluation, we're making a choice, and then we're taking action over and over. So discernment is how we get there. And the thing is, many people think it's all about external action. And what they forget is the most important piece of understanding, discerning, what am I here for, is to go inside and listen. Ask the question of the you that inhabits your interior space, and then be still and listen. No matter how long it takes, ask and listen. What typically happens is we ask, and then we very quickly use our intellect, our brains, to come up with a pathway or a thing. I should call this person, or I should do that, and I need to go get a degree because that's what people in this industry have, and I don't have one. And oh my gosh, I didn't get a good enough grade, so I'm not going to get a job there. So now what do? We end up going into this chatterbox head of intellect when actually what's being called for is not the head at all. It's the heart. It's the soul. It's the deepest aspect of you. And that cannot be intellectualized away. It's always going to be there. I talk about in my book, my heart was always calling to me. I was just so busy in my rationalizations, my quantifications, my analytical stuff, my intellectual prowess, that I never really listened. And if I did listen and I did hear guidance, what do you think happened? I actually let my head overrule that guidance. So for a long time in my life, I was pursuing things that my head told me I should pursue. Well, you're capable, you're talented, you've got this experience, you should stay on this path. And meanwhile, I was noticing that I was missing out on the things that really bring me joy. And it's funny that as a really young girl, I thought that I had a desire to teach and advise and support and serve. And I never did that until, the last 15, 20 years. And so I hope that answers your question, but it's about, you have to have a relationship with yourself that takes you deeper so that you can go higher. Deeper into you will help you go higher in your consciousness. And the combination of those two will allow you to shine like an amazing light on what's already inside you. It came with you when you entered the body that you really came here to do. And it's not going to be about titles, and it might surprise you. I had a spiritual teacher who once said, when the heart speaks, it could be outrageous.
Wow. I really appreciate that. I mean, I think, a lot of people, I think, don't take enough time to sit and listen to what that inner voice is telling them. And I think a lot of people don't know where to start, but just even the practice of being quiet and sitting and listening, and again, listening to the heart and letting the mind follow is just a huge perception shift on reality for most people, right? Because most people, they're just in their heads,
Yes.
so disembodied from the connection to their soul and to their heart. So I really love that. And the last piece that you mentioned in these 4 principles is about putting this knowledge into action. And so how do you see people do that? Once they know what they come here for, what are some of the ways that you've seen people put these ideas into action and reinforce them? How do you see that shift happening?
The shift can happen in many ways. I mean, it can go from a spectrum of radical, where people leave their jobs and get on a path toward having what they really want. It could be that people notice they're playing small in what they're doing, and there's upside by them being more courageous and confident in how they actually bring their vision to life, and they stay exactly where they are. And so it might be, I do have a book inside me, I should write it. Or actually, it's not a self help book or a nonfiction book. I really want to write children's fiction. Or somebody who is in their midlife who decides, I never should have hung up my ballet shoes. I'm not going to be a prima ballerina, but I could have kept dancing just for the love of dancing. And because dancing is a form of creative expression, the divinity in me is being sprinkled everywhere I go. And that is a part of my service to myself, allowing myself to be fully expressed, and also my service to my community and the planet. More creativity, more love light is being shined, and that changes the world for everyone. It may be that people know they're exactly where they are, but they've just lost their passion for it. And so they reignite that passion by going through some exercises and some readings and retreats, or some kind of activity that helps them notice what's in their way, what's holding them back, helping them sort of move out of the space of resistance to what wants to come through and making a new relationship with it. So it runs the gamut from minute actions of support to self and helping you continue on a path. Some people are already on the path. They just need help knowing about whether the next step is forward or whether they're supposed to take a detour, or what. And other people really wake up to, holy Moses, this is not it. And I'm going to take a leap of faith and go toward it. And then we work on, if you got a family to support, maybe quitting your job and trying to figure it out doesn't necessarily work. And so we orchestrate the the means that allow them to feel safe and secure, while they're also honoring the truth of who they are.
Mm. I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate that you work with people at whatever level that they're at, right? Because everyone's on a very different part of their journey. So really, making space for that is important. So Valerie, I want to talk a little bit about, what do you do when you wake up unhappy? What would be the first thing that you would tell someone who's experiencing this? Just curious, how you navigate that yourself.
What do you mean, like this morning?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think there are a couple myths inside the question. So I'm going to address the myths first, and then I'll tell you what I do. So there's a myth that once you are on this path to unconditional, self-determined happiness, that there's never any upset, there's never any sadness, there's never any debilitation, there's never any wanting or longing, and that everything is copacetic. And that's kind of a myth. Um, the idea that we're talking about in self-determined happiness is you choose it no matter what. So you choose it even when you wake up feeling I'm lost, even when you wake up feeling I'm lonely, even when you wake up feeling having the context or content of a disagreement from yesterday still playing in your heart and in your mind. And when you look at your bank account and you look at your bills and there's a gap and you're not sure how to fill it, when the person that you really, really love from a romantic point of view and would like to spend your life with is not interested in that game plan. I mean, there are a thousand different ways that we are all going through the same thing, which is there's a difference between what we intend for ourselves, what we would like to have, and what is actually showing up. And there are lots of reasons for the gap, but just there's a gap there. And so the idea here is even in the midst of that muck and yuck, as I call it in my life, muck and yuck, I've got the agency, to use the word that I love that you said earlier, Yasmin, the agency to choose for myself how I'm going to describe myself to myself in a situation. So I'm going to use this morning. I've got some things going on. I've got some big plans and I'm very excited about them. And I'm in this space of insecurity about whether I'm going to be able to do what's necessary, whether I have the wherewithal to bring them to fruition. And so this morning, and I don't look at my clock when I wake up in the middle of the night. That's a practice of allowing myself to go back to sleep. I'm going to say, based on when my alarm went off, that it was probably around 4 a.m. And I simply sat in the insecurity and made it perfectly fine. I have big dreams, big plans. There's a period of gestation. And so far, the evidence that they're coming true isn't keeping up with my need, quote unquote, my need for the evidence. And so we talked a little bit earlier about getting quiet. So that's what I did. I got quiet. I asked myself, where's this fear coming from? What's it about? I gave myself the grace to go, oh, this is that old fear of not being enough, old fear of not being lovable, old ideas about my stuff turns to crap and other people's stuff turns to gold. And so using this, spiritual alchemy of I'm safe right where I am, and I'm going to focus on the intention that I'm trying to bring, that I'm bringing into fruition, and not my fears about not bringing it into fruition. Wherever we put our energy expands. Whatever we resist persists. So I don't want to resist the feelings of unhappiness. I'd rather make peace with them, make love to them. Thank you for coming and showing me that there's still some pockets of fear. It's okay to be afraid. It's just not okay to stop. And so I keep going. So that was this morning. From a ritualistic practice, what I would say for a morning ritual is as soon as you notice yourself coming awake, do a little bit of a scan. Connect with your physical body. How's it feeling? What's happening? And I would suggest try to do this with your eyes closed. So almost still before you've come to full wakeness. Allow yourself to just rest in this kind of middle place, the middle journey between asleepness and awakeness. Check in with yourself. Say hello to yourself before you say hello to anything or anybody else. Hello, me. How's it doing? Yeah. Didn't sleep so well. Yeah. I wonder if I'm going to be tired today. I don't know. I'm going to go through the day, assuming all is well, and then I'm going to see what happens and how I should respond. Notice that's different than react. So you're spending a couple of minutes, doesn't have to be 20 minutes of meditation. It can be 2 minutes of greet yourself. stay in bed, greet yourself. Then, before you come out of that into full awakeness, set an intention for what you wish to experience that day and make yourself the centerpiece of it. Don't make it about, I intend that so and so not disturb me in my office. Make it about who you're going to be and how you're going to be that person. I intend that today I look for all the ways that my life is perfect exactly as it is, even as I go to shift things that I would like to be better. Like, give yourself something to focus on that is a part of the equation of your happiness. Just you, your happiness. And then get up and get about doing it. That's like walk in the intention. Like put your feet onto the dream.
Amazing. Wow. I love that so much, Valerie. That's amazing. So to wake up, do a body scan, check in with self, and then set an intention. Don't go to your phone. I think most people go to their phone or start thinking about work or, what they have to do for the day. But
The only thing I would say about that, Yasmin, because I used to be a don't go to your phone either until I put this app on my phone called Insight Timer. And I don't benefit from saying this, and I know there are other ones out there like Calm, and I'm not saying one's better than the other. So if you use your phone as a way to support your personal evolution into a higher vibration, to support yourself in your happiness journey, then I would say go to the phone. So I use Insight Timer. And after I've done my lying in bed thing, I actually, even while I'm making my bed and deciding what I'm going to wear and in my bathroom brushing my teeth and doing those rituals of the morning, my Insight Timer is playing like a 31-minute piano improvisational that's about peace. Or if I, for example, I have an ability to get very, I can have a warring self. We all can, actually. And so if I notice that in the last couple of days, I feel like I've been a little too fractious, a little too aggressive, if something is coming up inside me that wants to be right all the time and wants to win, like that competitive nature, there's a Sarah Blondin um, guided meditation on the warring self and the higher self. And I might listen to that as a reminder of who I really want to be. It calls me into a higher vibration. So if you've got things on your phone that do that, I would say integrate them 1,000 times a day. If you, um, any little power pill, as we used to say in my bowling team, a power pill, any little power pill that you can give yourself to support yourself to be what it is you came here to be, then do it. Do it.
amen to that. I love that, the immersion piece of just like reinforcing and reinforcing, because we're being programmed, but we're being programmed all day long, usually on things that we don't really want in our reality. So, this idea of actually reprogramming ourselves to be in our highest life path possible, or to be on a life path that is in alignment with our mission and purpose, is so important and powerful, and just really can't be underestimated.
And you brought up something really powerful there, which is, I mean, I hear from a lot of people, the way they keep themselves in happiness is to remove themselves from the things in life that are not so happy. So I never listen to the news. It's nothing but crap. And I did that for a time. And then what I found was I wasn't evolving my consciousness around how to create my level of happiness that is completely agnostic to the conditions of the world. The conditions of the world are always going to reflect the consciousness of the people living in the world. It's universal law. You can't get around it. As above, so below, as within, so without, law of reflection, law of karma, all these different things are at play. So removing oneself to be able to stay in a high vibration is a limitation that you're putting on yourself that you don't necessarily see that it's setting you up for failure long term. So my suggestion is it's more important for you to practice the muscle of something that Eckhart Tolle teaches, which is that so? Like to be able to see the ugly underbelly of life and also call in the light. I think Martin Luther King said, darkness does not change darkness, only light can do that. So if there's darkness in your world, either coming from you or other people or the news or whatever, see how you can bring your own light into that space, whether it's not taking the bait and railing against it, which just took you into the darkness, but a place where you can say, well, look at that. And with love and compassion and grace, I send my prayers. I send my high vibration. I ask what's in it for me to do. And everything is not for you to do. That's not what I'm saying. But it's being a both and. I take time away and I go be an ascetic on the mountain from time to time. And that fortifies me for those places where I feel called to get into the fray.
This is a very powerful point, and one actually I'm happy that we are ending on, because I think that most people have made their lives so small by choosing not to engage in so many parts of society, right? On this path especially. And I think becoming resilient in the way that you speak about, which is to observe our reality, and this practice of is that so, but not getting caught in the web of it, is, I think, the resiliency practice is so important moving forward on this path.
Yes.
So Valerie, thank you so much for your time. This was so delightful, and I love the way that you frame this work and the way that you interpret this journey. I really, really appreciate your level of thinking, and I'm just so inspired by you.
Yasmin, yeah, we are a mutual admiration society. From the very first time I met you, very first moment I met you, I could feel the purposeful nature of your experience, your reason for being here. And I could also feel this very large, generous, compassionate, and beautiful heart. And so I really appreciate your contributions to making the world a world that works for everyone. And so thank you very much.
Oh, that means a lot to me. Thank you so much, Valerie. Really, really appreciate you. And where can people find your book, and where can people find you? Are there any resources that you can point folks to in order to learn more about you?
Absolutely. So my website is HeartlyCenter.com, HeartLy, center, spelled the American way, TER.com. And my book is available on Amazon, and it's in hard copy and in a Kindle format. And if you feel that it would be better for you to get the book as a PDF download, you can do that on my website as well. So those are great ways. And you can always email me at valerie@heartlycenter.com.
Thank you so much again for your time. And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about why happiness is found by living it and how to shift your perception with Dr. Valerie René Sheppard. And you can tune in to Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again.